July 4th, 2023 was the hottest day in recorded history. Now, our temperature recordings don't date back earlier than the 20th century, but by observing ice cores, tree rings, and more, scientists have estimated that the last time the Earth was this hot was 125,000 years ago. Sadly, this record will not stand for long. As climate change worsens and the Earth heats up more, it will continue to be broken. New records will likely be set before summer ends in the Northern Hemisphere. And extreme heat is only one of the many examples that we are currently seeing of climate change. In this video, I'll start with the bad news and review some of the impacts of climate change that we're seeing right now, but then I'll switch to the good news that came out recently. Firstly, let's go back to the heat. Extreme heat has been blanketing the southern United States and northern Mexico, causing three-digit temperatures for millions of people and leading to several deaths. In the US alone, 57 million people were exposed to dangerous heat on the 4th of July. This was caused by a heat dome, which is a high-pressure system in the atmosphere that traps heat over a large area for a long period of time. The same thing happened in the Pacific Northwest in 2021, when a heat dome caused temperatures to skyrocket. Massive heat waves like this will become more common as climate change progresses. In fact, scientists estimate that the current heat wave over North America was made 5 times more likely by the human-caused climate change we have already experienced. The heat hasn't been limited to North America, though. China and Northern Africa are enduring similarly bad heat waves, and Antarctica, which is currently in winter, is observing temperatures well above freezing. Earlier this year, Spain, Puerto Rico, and Siberia all had astonishing heat waves. Part of the reason why it is so hot this year is because we have entered an El Niño cycle. Basically, an El Niño is when every few years global air and ocean currents change, causing higher temperatures. So the high temperatures from this El Niño, combined with the high temperatures from climate change, have created catastrophic conditions. And this year's El Niño isn't even in full swing yet. It could get much worse later this summer. In fact, this year may be the first year in which global temperatures surpass 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. Now, 1.5 degrees doesn't seem like a lot, but it's really bad, and it's the number that scientists have been warning us not to cross. The air isn't the only thing that's heating up. Ocean temperatures have been breaking records in the North Atlantic this summer, and high sea surface temperatures have also been prevalent in the Northwest and Southwest Pacific. This is a combination of the impacts of climate change and this El Niño cycle, and it has major consequences. Marine heat waves such as the ones we're currently seeing can cause massive die-offs of marine organisms, melt much more sea ice than a summer typically would, and reduce the ocean's ability to lessen the impacts of climate change. Projections estimate that by September, sea surface temperatures in 50% of the ocean could be high enough to meet the criteria of a marine heat wave. Extreme heat isn't the only climate impact we're seeing right now. Fire is also becoming a major issue. Already this summer, over 500 wildfires have burned through astonishing amounts of Canadian forests, and the smoke from these fires has blown into the United States and has caused some of the worst air quality in U.S. history, affecting 110 million Americans. While the air quality in the northeastern U.S. has started to improve as the smoke has dissipated, the fires are far from gone. In fact, Canadian forests may continue to burn until the end of the fire season, which is months from now. Additionally, fires raging across large swaths of eastern Russia have led Siberian officials to declare a state of emergency. As climate change worsens, fires will continue to become larger and more frequent, and the fire season will keep expanding. As dangerous as heat is, it's necessary to remember that climate change is much more than just hotter days. On this note, many parts of the world are currently enduring extreme drought. For example, Uruguay is suffering its worst drought in 74 years, and the situation is so severe that a state of emergency has been declared, and officials have resorted to adding salt water to public drinking water supplies, making the country's tap water virtually undrinkable. This has prompted massive protests across the country, as most of Uruguay's water goes to massive agriculture operations instead of to the general public, and citizens feel betrayed that amid dwindling water supplies, the government has helped to the companies instead of the people. As climate change progresses, tensions will increase around the world as there is more opportunity for situations like this to occur. While climate change can cause water shortages, it can also bring too much water. For example, parts of Vermont are currently underwater, and the state's capital has been completely flooded. Disastrous floods are also washing away cars in Spain and highways in India. Extreme flooding is also hitting China, where it has killed 15 people and displaced 10,000 more. And this is all happening while a massive heat wave roils the nation. This is the important distinction between climate change and global warming. Climate change is extreme heat, but it is also everything else. It makes weather patterns more severe and less predictable, and it throws all of Earth's systems out of whack. Additionally, we must remember that the people who have contributed the least to this crisis are the ones who have to bear the brunt of its impact. Low-income people and people in disadvantaged communities have fewer resources to deal with the impacts of climate change. This can be as simple as not having good masks to wear when the smoke fills the air, or as complex as not having a well-developed and reliable energy grid to power air conditioning during a heat wave, or not even having air conditioning at all. When we work to stop climate change, we must put justice at the forefront and help people who have been harmed the most by these problems that they didn't even create. After all of this bad news, you may be surprised to learn that there has been some good news that has come out of all of these terrible events. But there is. For example, the brutal heat wave in Texas caused much of the state's aging coal and gas-fired power plants to fail, but solar and wind energy, along with increased battery storage, was able to pick up the slack. This is the perfect example of how renewables are not unreliable. As long as there is adequate planning and management, they can actually work better with the energy grid than fossil fuels. The other good news is that we know how to keep all of these terrible events from getting worse. If we stop burning fossil fuels, we will stop making climate change worse. This means that the planet will stop getting hotter and all of these other crazy events will stop getting worse. If our governments transition away from using fossil fuels and towards renewable energy sources, it will halt climate change in its tracks. But we cannot expect this to happen at the next United Nations Climate Change Conference, which is in Dubai and is being run by the chief executive of an oil company. We clearly can't hope the governments will do this work on their own. What we can do is pressure our governments to take action at home. For example, a recent court case saw young people from Montana sue the state government because of its proliferation of fossil fuel development in the state. If we put enough pressure on our governments to shift to a cleaner, greener future, we can stop climate change. We can stop the heat waves, fires, and floods from getting worse. But unfortunately, we have to put in the work. If you can, please look into joining a volunteer group working to fight climate change. There are tons of local groups, so there's likely a good fit for you. And if you aren't up for that right now, please find ways to make your life more eco-friendly, support important environmental campaigns when you can, and vote for politicians who are on the planet's side. If we can pressure our governments to do the right thing, 2023 may be one of the last record-breaking years.